Thank you. I just came down from New Hampshire, and I'm reading a book about Hamilton and Jefferson. And in it they have the quote from Hamilton where he says, "The national debt is a public blessing." Thomas Jefferson sort of responds that really it's more of a curse than a blessing. But we still have some of this same discussion going on in the Republican Party and in our country. We have a discussion. We have Hamiltonians and we've got Jeffersonians still in our party. And to me, I think that the debt is a great threat. I think it's a threat to the very foundation of our country. It won't surprise you that some disagree, and some think that, well, it doesn't matter what we borrow the money for, but if we're going to spend it on advancing the military, it's fine. I guess the problem I have is that if you're going to spend $1 trillion of new money that's going to be added to the debt, does that make us stronger or weaker? Admiral Mullen, career officer, said that he thinks that the biggest threat to our national security is our debt, and I agree with him. I don't think that we project strength from bankruptcy court. I think the further we get into debt, the further danger there is that we actually might destroy the currency. We actually might destroy the country. So this is a debate we're going to have. Now we have staring us in the face this terrible tragedy in Paris. And we think to ourselves, what are we going to do? How are we going to defend our country? How will we be safe? One of the things I think we have to learn, and one of the lessons we should learn from the tragedy in Paris, is that we have to be very careful and very cautious, extraordinarily cautious about who comes to visit, who immigrates here, and who studies here. Once upon a time after 9/11, we had a program that had extra scrutiny for those who wanted to visit us. I'm all for that. In fact, I tried to reinstitute this. President Obama canceled it. The one cost savings that President Obama came up with was canceling a program that scrutinized those who were coming to visit us. But I tried to reintroduce this. You will recall there was an immigration bill. Rubio and Schumer put forward an immigration bill. And so I put forward an amendment called Trust But Verify, because the biggest problem to all types of immigration reform is people say, oh, we're going to secure the border, and it never comes. We leave it up to the president, even Republican presidents, and it's never come. So I had an amendment that said, you know what? We'll check up on the president. We'll have a check and a balance, and each year Congress will vote on whether or not the border is secure. I also put in this amendment the increased scrutiny for those who want to come here as students or visiting or immigrating, particularly from about 25 countries. You can guess which ones. The thing is, those who came and attacked us on 9/11, they were here on student visas. They overstayed their visas. We didn't know they were here. 2 of them were on the watch list. We weren't communicating. The CIA knew they were in San Diego, but the FBI didn't for some reason. So we let our guard down. But when I introduced my amendment, Trust But Verify, to the immigration bill, unfortunately I got some opposition. Your senator, in fact, opposed me on this. I tried to pass something that I think was a conservative proposition to the immigration bill that would have had more scrutiny for refugees, for visitors, for students. And one of the reasons I became very concerned about this is that I live in a little town in Kentucky, in Bowling Green, and we had 2 people come from Iraq, refugees, still trying to figure out how you have people seeking political asylum when we won the war. But they came to Bowling Green and then decided to buy surface-to-air missiles to attack us. And we caught them, fortunately. But I'm asking the question, who in the hell is in charge of scrutinizing these people? So my amendment would have required fingerprinting, background checks, and extensive scrutiny of those who were coming to visit us. Now, I thought this would get conservative support because I think we do need to know who's coming and who's going across our border. I thought it would have made the immigration bill a much stronger bill. But here's what happened, and this is not widely known, but there was a deal made between Marco Rubio and Chuck Schumer. It's somewhat of a secret deal, but it's also somewhat well known now. They agreed to block all amendments from conservatives. And so what you wound up with was a bill that no conservative could support, and a bill that led to citizenship in a way that most of us thought was inappropriate. But to me, it's also about national security. Because when we look at our border, you can't have a wide open border. You do have to have control of your border if you're going to be a nation. And if we're going to defend ourselves, we need to know who comes and who goes. Some will say, doesn't matter. We don't like you because you won't spend $1 trillion more than what we're spending. Well, guess what? We already spend over $600 billion on the military, including another $40 billion on Homeland Security. What I'm saying is, let's spend it wisely, but let's don't add to the debt to do this, because the debt's dragging us down. In fact, there's a secret, there's sort of an unholy alliance going on in Washington. And this is really, and Rush Limbaugh put it well the other day. He said, Republicans are losing their high moral ground. We can no longer blame it all on the Democrats, because guess what? Both parties are now the problem. We raised the debt ceiling. We raised the debt ceiling an unspecified amount. They just said, we're going to raise it, Mr. President. You can raise it as much as you want till March of 2017, all the way into the next president. So I kept him awake till 3 in the morning, filibustering against this. I can tell you they were less than happy with me, and I heard a few words that I cannot reveal on the national stage. As they walked by my desk, there were quite a few epithets being hurled at me because they were unhappy that they were there at 3 in the morning. And I said, look, the country is worth us having a debate over this. And I told him, I said, you go outside the Beltway, and this was at 2 in the morning. I said, you drive outside the Beltway and you stop at the first grocery store. You stop at the first convenience store or gas station, and you introduce yourself to the first person you meet, and you ask them, is it a good idea to raise the debt ceiling and raise the spending at the same time? It's like giving your college kid who's got $2,000 of debt on their credit card, giving them more credit. Who does that? We need to reform our spending. And then what they'll tell you, here's what you get from the establishment. The establishment says, oh, well, we don't have the votes, and we'll have to have a Republican president. Look, when I was elected in 2010, there was this big Tea Party tidal wave. And we came in, but all we took was the House. And we didn't take the Senate, but we had a debt ceiling vote. Some of you will remember this. We had a debt ceiling vote, and the president said, I will not negotiate with a gun to my head. And then he promptly negotiated. And we got what was called the sequester. The sequester has been described by most of the media. It was not a cut in spending, but it was a slowdown in the rate of growth of spending. So government was still growing, but at a slower rate, and it was at least something positive. We got that with only one Republican House. Now we have a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and we got squat. We went the wrong direction. What's happened up there is many of the members have become like furniture. All right? Inertia, status quo. The only way you'll ever fix it is we need term limits for everybody. People ask me, they say, what's the worst thing the president has done? And I say, how long do you have? But really what I think it all is, it's not just Obamacare, it's not the banking regulations. If I wanted to sum it all up in one statement, I would say it's the collapse of the separation of powers. You remember what he said? He said, I've got my pen and I've got my phone, and by golly, he's just going to do what he wants. And that's what he's been doing, time and time again. The separation of powers was one of the most important things that our founders gave to us. In fact, Madison put it this way. He said we would have co-equal branches of government, they would check and balance each other, and we would pit ambition against ambition. Ambition of Congress to want more power would be pitted against the president, who would want more power, and they would check and balance each other. But if I had to give you an estimate of the way Washington works now, I would say that the president is 1,000-fold more powerful than Congress. Why? Because you have a Congress that rolls over, plays dead, and has become inconsequential. We have the power to control spending right now. Spending expires at the end of the year. Automatically, it's in the law. So what happens when spending expires? Let it all expire and tell the Democrats they've got to restart it. Do you know what it would take? How many people think we ought to defund Planned Parenthood? Planned Parenthood goes away if we let it expire. And then to restart it, if the other side wants to fund Planned Parenthood or any of 1,000 wasteful programs, they would have to have a majority in the House and 60 votes in the Senate. See, they're not being honest with you. They're saying we can't defund anything because we can't get 60 votes. We don't need 60 votes. It all expires automatically if we will let the spending expire, and a second later we can restart it, what needs to be restarted. Tell the Democrats they need 60 votes to fund Planned Parenthood. When we look at the problems that we face, and we look at who we're going to choose as our next commander-in-chief, I'm reminded of what I think is probably the worst scandal of the last 8 years, and that's Benghazi. It isn't the movie, it isn't the spin afterwards. Politicians are almost uniformly dishonest. You can expect them to spin their story. But what gets me about Benghazi more than anything else is that time after time, maybe a dozen times, Hillary Clinton was asked for more security, and it was denied. In the spring of that year, she began sending people home. She began telling our troops over there not to wear their boots because we were offending the freedom fighters in Libya. Told them not to carry their weapons because guns are dangerous, and we don't want to show the freedom fighters that we think we need guns, so let's don't have any guns around. She sent home a special forces team of 6 guys in February. She sent home another special forces team of 6 guys in March. Gets to April. In April, they requested the use of a plane. Denied. Do you remember on the night of the attack what happened? There was no plane. In fact, you want to really be as insulted as Americans with the greatest military on earth? Our guys had to beg for the use of a Libyan plane. Of course, it was an American plane that we'd probably given to the Libyans, but we had to beg them to fly on our own damn plane. The day she turns down the plane, 3 days later, she approves $100,000 for an electrical charging station for the Chevy Volt for our Vienna embassy. Seems they were greening up the embassy. Believe it or not, this is what's going on in your country. You think, well, how are we going to have enough money to defend ourselves? Well, maybe we don't need to green up all this stuff. If you've got to weigh the defense of Benghazi versus buying an electrical charging station for Vienna's embassy, my goodness. Then she had the gall to come before our committee and say, oh, we didn't give her enough money. So I began listing the things she spent the money on. The summer before our ambassador was killed, they spent $700,000 on landscaping for the Brussels embassy. They spent $100,000 sending 3 comedians to India on the Make Chai, Not War tour. They spent $500,000 on Facebook ads. It seems that the State Department doesn't have enough friends, so they want you to like them. All summer long, they were spending things. They spent $5 million on crystal barware and glassware for the embassies, but didn't have enough money to defend them in Benghazi. So it comes to a month before the ambassador is killed, and the ambassador sending plea after plea. Now he's sending cables from himself to Hillary Clinton. So when she came into my committee for the investigation and said, you know, she didn't know anything about this, she just said, did you read the cables? That's what I asked her. Did you read the cables from the ambassador pleading for help? And she said no, and she kind of acted all huffy like she was too busy to read them. And you know what? You know what I tell her? By her inaction, by her dereliction of duty, she should forever be precluded from being Commander-in-Chief. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, some people will ask, how are we going to have enough money to defend ourselves if you're not willing to go into debt farther for it? First, we spend $600 billion, more than the next 10 countries combined. Add China, Russia, and 8 more countries, and that's what we currently spend. There's a lot of money. Quit wasting it. I'll give you an area where we might not want to spend any money. I say not one penny for countries that are persecuting Christians around the world. You would think that would pass, right? I introduced an amendment in the Foreign Relations Committee that says no money for any country that persecutes Christians. How did I define it? Any country that has the death penalty for criticizing the state religion. And you know what state religion we're talking about here. The vote was 18-2 against me. 18-2 to continue sending your money to these countries that hate us, to countries that persecute Christians. I'd save all that money and put it into our defense so we can protect ourselves. And some people say, well, surely no one's putting Christians to death. Asia Bibi is a Christian in Pakistan. There are not many Christians left in Pakistan. She went to draw water from the well, and they began stoning her and beating her. She was bleeding and on her knees, crying out for help. She was a Christian in a Muslim village, falls to her knees, bleeding and crying for help. And finally the police arrive, and she thinks she's been saved, only to be arrested. She's been on death row in Pakistan for 5 years, and yet we continue to give billions of dollars of our money. In fact, we don't even have the money. We borrow it from China to send it to Pakistan. There is so much within our government that we could save money with and put to our defense without saying, oh, we're just going to spend $1 trillion we don't have by borrowing it. We still have a debate in our party between the Hamiltonians and the Jeffersonians. Those of us who believe in limited government, who believe in balanced budgets, who believe that the safety of the country only comes when you spend what comes in and you don't go further into debt. This debate goes on. This is the debate I think that our party needs to have. It can be done in a polite fashion, but we need to have this. Are we of unlimited resources? Can we go further into debt, or will that harm us as a country? This is a debate we need to have. As we move forward and we think about what we want to project to the American people and what's the message that we can project that can win the country and beat Hillary Clinton, I think of the painter by the name of Robert Henry, and he had this message to young painters. He said, paint like a man coming over the hill singing. I think when we proclaim our message, with passion that we're going to defend the entire Bill of Rights, that we're going to be the party of justice, when we proclaim that message with hope and optimism, and when we proclaim that message like a man coming over the hill singing, then we're going to be the dominant party. We're going to rock and roll to victory, and that's what I want to be part of. Thank you very much. Thank you.